The radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, October 20th. As you can see, I'm back home for a little while. Show today, tomorrow, and Wednesday. We'll do a show on Wednesday, and then I'm gone for over 2 weeks. I will be doing shows while I'm on the road when I can. So very uncertain schedule. I know some of you hate that. As long as I have to travel for what I do and keep traveling to make a living, then that's just what I have to do. All right, guys, we are going to, by the way, I'm going to give you the cities I'm going to be in speaking, so that if you're interested in coming to some of my talks, some of them are private, but some of them are, most of them are public, then you can check out on my website, yaronbookshow.com, yaronbookshow.com. If you scroll down the page, you'll see my whole schedule, and there'll be links to places where you can. So I'm going to be speaking in, I won't be public speaking. I'm just doing public. Tel Aviv on a week from today, exactly a week from today, on the 27th in Tel Aviv. Information, hopefully today I'll have information that I can post. Then Krakow in Poland, then Prague in the Czech Republic. I'll be in Oslo, but it's a private event. Then Vienna, it's a public event. Again, information is all on my website. Porto in Portugal, big debate or discussion or panel or whatever you want to call it. And then Lisbon for a couple of events. So Lisbon. All of that available online. And then I'm going to be, a week after that, I'm going to be in San Francisco for a debate on Christianity versus the West. Should be fascinating. So that'll be in San Francisco. Information on that is not yet up on my website, but will be coming soon. And finally, Colorado Springs on the 13th of November. I'm debating a socialist. From Jacobian Magazine in Colorado Springs. So those are the events. Keep track. If the information is not yet on my website, it will be soon. I hope to see many of you at these events. Please come. Please show up. Let me know you follow the show. Shake my hand. Say hi. It'll be fun. That'll be great. Thank you. All right, let's jump in. Gaza. That didn't take long. Didn't take long in the sense that, we now have the ceasefire was broken over the weekend by Hamas. They attacked a group of soldiers in Rafah. And now Rafah is within the area that is under Israeli control. It's not the area from which Israel withdrew. Hamas, of course, says, that's a rogue unit. They didn't get the memo that there was a ceasefire. Israel didn't take it that way. Israel viewed it as a break of ceasefire. 2 soldiers were killed, tragic, and a couple were injured. Israel then started a bombing campaign within the areas controlled by the Hamas and elsewhere, bombing a lot of the tunnels. We'll get to that later. Bombing a lot of the tunnels. And the Americans freaked out. So the Trump administration freaked out, and they were very upset. They immediately called the Israelis and told them to stop. Israel tried to resist. Ultimately, the story is that Trump kind of put his foot down, and the Israelis stopped. Oh, no, this was just a misunderstanding. It turns out Hamas is saying, and the ceasefire is back on. Not only that, but the administration has sent out Witkoff and what's his name, the son-in-law, Josh, whatever his name is. They sent him to Israel. They arrived today. and to try to put pressure on Israel to go get back into the negotiating mood. Tomorrow we're going to see J.D. Vance arrive in Israel for kind of a formal VP visit, again, to put pressure on Israel to sustain the ceasefire while the negotiations are going on. In the meantime, the administration is putting almost all of its eggs, it seems, in the basket of Qatar. Qatar is Jared Kushner. Thank you. Qatar is the hope, the salvation of, I guess, the Gaza Strip, and the Americans are putting a lot of their faith in the Qataris, so a negotiation is going to start up on the phase 2 of the ceasefire, which would require the disarmament of Hamas and the entry of an international peacekeeping force made up of primarily from the Arab nations. But here's the reality. The reality is that Qatar is out there saying to the world that Hamas is not going to disarm, that Hamas is going to have to be a part of the long-term solution, that there is no de-radicalization, disarmament, or taking Hamas out of the picture. They are going to be part of whatever peace agreement is going to happen. Now, these supposedly were red lines for Israel and red lines for this administration. But the Qataris are just ignoring that completely and basically dictating kind of their terms. And it's quite shocking the extent to which the Qataris seem to have their claws, their fangs, whatever you want to call it, into this administration. I certainly understand the financial interest that both Jared Kushner, the Trumps, and Witkoff have in Qatar, and Qatar is using that. We also know about the gift the Qataris gave to the President of the United States, $400 million gift. Something doesn't smell right there about getting a gift like that from anybody, never mind a foreign government who is not a friend of the United States. But put that aside. Anyway, the Qataris are insisting on a central role here. Together with them are the Turks and the Egyptians. Turkey is not really interested in actual peace long term. They want to appear friendly to the United States so they get their F-35s. But ultimately, Turkey and Qatar's agenda is very much aligned around support for the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is the parent organization, if you will, of all the Sunni terrorist organizations out there, from Al-Qaeda to ISIS, certainly to Hamas, which used to be called the Muslim Brotherhood of Palestine. The Qatar is the base of the Muslim Brotherhood in the world, the global base. That is where its preachers disseminate information. That is where its headquarters are. Everything happens through Qatar. And yet the United States treats them as an ally and a friend. And the Qataris and the Turks have every intention of keeping Hamas well established in the Gaza Strip. Now, Trump keeps saying that's unacceptable and that won't happen. And if the Hamas doesn't disarm and so on, they will be destroyed. But we've heard that kind of language before, and there's no indication and no suggestion that he can follow up on that. The Israelis keep saying we will not cut a deal, but the appetite for war right now in Israel is very low. Hostages are back. Israel kind of wants to get on with life. They want to go on with living. They're tired of war. They've been going at war for 2 years now. Soldiers have been dying. Parents have been worried about their kids in Gaza, and they just want to get on with things. And yet, Hamas is still there. The political leaders are saying we got to take care of Hamas, and the Israeli public is, yeah, we kind of know, but we'd rather just evade that so we can get on with life, which is how Israel's behaved for decades now. Why we got October 7th, partially because the political leaders went along with the Israeli public in evading the threat. Trump just wants a Nobel Prize. He just wants this somehow to be resolved. He's not interested in the details. He certainly is not interested in justice and has no problem cutting deals with evil, and is aligned himself with the Qataris, and is going to a large extent, seems to be willing to let the Qataris manage the process of moving forward. From his perspective, the hostages got released. Everything else is a detail. Figure it out. Who cares? But the reality is, the Qataris and the Turks are going to be the ones moving this forward, pushing this, and their push is going to be for keeping Hamas armed, keeping Hamas involved in the political process one way or the other. The Israelis will resist that. The U.S. will try to balance the two interests. I don't think the U.S. negotiators have are going to insist strongly one way or the other. Hard to tell where this goes. Now, what's interesting in all of this is that maybe the most important potential players in the Middle East are not really involved here, and on purpose. Like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have basically said to themselves, said to the Americans, you are being fooled by the Qataris. The Qataris do not have, they're not interested in actually disarming Hamas. We do not want Hamas. We are not going to put money into rebuilding Gaza. We're not going to put troops in for a peacekeeping force as long as Hamas is in the presence. The officials, Saudi officials, are constantly warning the Americans about the Qatari and the Turks and what they want. And for now, they are completely staying out of it. They are not involved. And of course, without them, it's going to be very difficult to establish anything. The Hamas are confident enough right now that they are out there telling the world, we're not going to disarm. So a senior Hamas official in Qatar yesterday, the day before yesterday, basically said, Hamas will not disarm. We will maintain control over Gaza security. This ceasefire is only temporary. Hudna is a temporary peace before the next war. He says a pause to rebuild our strength and regain some breathing room. So Trump has basically handed, and the Israelis have handed Hamas a pause to rebuild, to get stronger, and some breathing room. And yesterday, when Israel was saying, oh, they violated the ceasefire, let's go in and crush them, Trump said, oh, no, you can't do that. You got to give them the breathing room. You got to let them rebuild. No, I mean, he didn't say that, but that's the implication. And yeah, I mean, basically, the Trump administration is, allowing Hamas to reestablish itself, to kill all their opponents within the areas that they control. One of the things that they're doing right now is they're going around all the Gaza Strip and trying to find munitions, Israeli munitions that maybe haven't exploded, to get the gunpowder out of it, in order to turn them into IEDs. They are rearming themselves. They are recommitting themselves. I mean, look, Hamas is a jihadi organization. They believe in fighting to the death. They believe if they die fighting, they go to heaven and get 72 virgins. They're completely committed to dying while fighting the Israelis. And, they succumb to pressure because of American pressure to release the hostages, but they have no intention of disarming, no intention of giving up, no intention of disappearing, of fading into the mist. And indeed, they view this ceasefire as a weakness on the part of the West. And this example now of they violated ceasefire, Israel responded, and Trump puts pressure on Israel to stop. That just reaffirms their commitment to continue their battle. The other thing you have to remember is they truly believe that they are winning, and they are right. It's not just that they believe, they're actually correct in this, that they're winning the PR game, that they're winning the hearts and minds of the global population, that Israel is becoming a pariah state in the world, and that the longer they persist and the longer they get Israel to bomb, the more Israel will be demonized. And that'll only strengthen them. And the fact that Western leaders recognize the Palestinian state emboldens Hamas to continue. So, within that area that Hamas controls, they've regained their control over the population there. And they are rearming themselves. They're preparing for war. They're preparing to fight against the Israelis. They don't have a chance, and they know that. They know they're going to lose. But they want to lose in a huge blaze of fire with a lot of civilian casualties so that they can establish the genocide, the fact that Israel is the bad actor. So, that's where we are. If you know the region, if you know anything about the conflict, you know that is going to be the outcome. And yet it is super sad to see the American, but not surprising, the American administration putting pressure on Israel, of all places. And what they should be doing is kicking out the Qataris, kicking out the Turks, handing organizational responsibilities over to the Saudis and to the UAE, who are much more moderate, who are much more interested in actual peace. Even the Egyptians, I think, are interested in ultimately the collapse of Hamas. The worst thing for Egypt is Hamas being more powerful, but also Egypt doesn't want Israel to kick out Hamas into Egypt. That would be horrific. The last thing Egypt wants is more Muslim Brotherhood, more Hamas in its territories. Egypt has been fighting the Muslim Brotherhood, fighting spin-offs of the Muslim Brotherhood for decades, and they don't need a boost to their numbers that could be provided by the collapse of Hamas and deportation of Hamas members out of the Gaza Strip. They want Hamas defeated or Hamas victorious, but they don't want a middle ground. And I think the Egyptians sense a weakness in the Americans and therefore are playing for a Hamas victory. So, one of the things we saw in the Israeli response to the Hamas breaking the ceasefire over the weekend is the extensive bombing that Israel engaged in over Hamas tunnels. Tunnels that Israel has known have existed for a long time. Tunnels out of which Hamas has attacked Israeli positions and indeed killed Israeli soldiers. One tunnel in particular that was attacked yesterday was a tunnel the Hamas terrorists used to launch an attack that killed 10 IDF soldiers earlier in the war. And the question is, if Israel knew those tunnels existed and they knew Hamas was using them, why didn't they bomb them into oblivion? Why didn't they bomb and why didn't they destroy? I mean, Israel has complete control over the air. They can bomb anything they want. They can destroy anything they want. And there are still significant number of tunnels in Gaza that can be used to attack Israelis, that can be used to hide Hamas. Why are they still in existence? And the answer to that is that they're in existence because Israel did not bomb them because that's where Hamas was hiding hostages. And here's the question being posed now in Israel. Okay, so in this particular tunnel from which Hamas came out and killed 10 Israeli soldiers, there were probably 2 Israeli hostages. Basically, what Israel chose to do is to trade the 2 hostages' lives for the 10 soldiers. And is that right? I think over the next few months, Israel's really going to grapple with this. Hundreds of soldiers died during the operation in Gaza. How many of their lives would have been saved if Israel has disregarded the existence of hostages and just crushed Hamas wherever they were, destroyed as much of their tunnel infrastructure as Israel knew about without regard to the hostages? Which is, by the way, the strategy I recommended on October 8th. On October 8th, I said, and have said over and over again since then, and said this in Israel. Only concern of the military should have been victory. Fast, quick, effective, complete and utter destruction of Hamas. And they should have saved the hostages whenever they could. But in generally, they should have not considered risk to the hostages as barriers to winning the war. In other words, they should have treated the hostages as if they were dead, rescued them when possible, and bombed and destroyed whatever was necessary to protect the soldiers' lives, to destroy Hamas's capabilities. They didn't do that, and they're going to have to grapple that. They have to grapple that. Amit Segal, who is one of the most prominent journalists in Israel, who is a huge ally of Netanyahu, he writes this. This, of course, presents a deeply uncomfortable reality. In choosing to protect Elkanah Bohot and the other hostage, these are the hostage in that tunnel, Israel knowingly left a lethal threat untouched. And the cost was 10 soldiers' lives. I won't judge whether that was the right decision or the least bad one. But it is a crucial arithmetic, but it is a cruel arithmetic that for the first time, Israelis are left to grapple with. Sometimes the moral imperative to save one life can come at the price of many others. Now note that this is not the first time Israel's grappled with this. This is the situation every time they released prisoners in order to gain a hostage. This is the arithmetic that they've used every time throughout this war when they didn't bomb. And it's an arithmetic that was obvious, at least to me, and I think to anybody looking at this conflict objectively, the day after October 7th. In war, it's not that there are any good choices. People are going to die one way or the other. Your people are going to die one way or the other because you can't run a riskless war. And you have to choose a criteria by which you're going to fight. You have to choose a governing principle, a governing criteria. I think that's true in life. In everything. In running a business. And there has to be one governing criteria that determines all other decisions. And I would say that in war, the governing criteria has to be victory. Victory that is quick and that minimizes casualties on your own side. Yeah, that is where we are, right? And those are the choices Israel made, and those are the choices they're going to grapple with. And I think they'll in the end evade and ignore it. And I give Amit Segal a lot of credit for writing this and posting this and engaging in this moral issue, because I think most people don't want to think about it. Most people don't want to do the calculus. Most people don't want to consider these moral issues. They got the hostages back. The soldiers that died, and they don't want to see the relationship between the two. All right, let us move on. Let us move on. Ukraine. So more information is coming out about the meeting between President Trump and Zelensky on Friday. And more information is coming out about the U.S.'s shift again. It keeps shifting. Every 2 weeks it shifts. Shifting position about the situation in Ukraine and about Putin's terms and conditions for, I guess, a ceasefire, peace, whatever you want to call it. It's clear that Putin, it seems like Putin basically said in his phone conversation with Trump on Thursday, I'm willing to give them a little bit of some of the other territories in Gershon and the other province whose name I can't pronounce. But what I want in return is all of Donbass. I want us to give 100% of Donbass. He already controls about 75% of Donbass. He wants to control 100% of Donbass. Of course, the part of Donbass that is still Ukrainian is the most fortified part in the whole battlefield. Trump seems to think this is a pretty good idea and try to convince Zelensky of this. Zelensky was putting on maps and showing him, and Trump was throwing the maps around and said he's fed up with maps. He doesn't want to look at maps. He's not interested in all this. And then Trump went back to his old position, which is, let's just freeze the border where it is. Let's just freeze it where it is, and we'll call it a day. And of course, that would mean Ukraine would have to give up all that territory, plus Crimea, and for what? For peace, I guess. For a ceasefire, for the Russians to be, the Russians like Hamas. It's not like Russians going to disarm. It's not like Russia's going to walk away. It's just Russia wants a pause. Russia wants to rearm. Russia wants to get new troops. It needs a breather. It's lost somewhere around 1.5 million soldiers killed or injured on the battlefield. So Trump just wants it frozen. And again, he wants to hand Trump a victory. Witkoff, who's also the envoy to Ukraine, who's somebody I have no respect for, zero zilch. The guy's a complete pragmatic nothing. Suppose he told Zelensky that you should just give up Donetsk. Just forget it, give it up. Witkoff has already met Putin 5 times this year. He was at the Oval Office meeting last week, and he just told him, just give it all up. And his logic was, the locals, they speak Russian anyway. In other words, just surrender. Witkoff, more so than others, Trump suddenly just completely giving in to Putin. I think Witkoff and J.D. Vance on Putin's side, probably Marco Rubio is on Zelensky's side, and I think that is basically the battle that's going on within the administration right now. Zelensky's visit on Friday, he got nothing. No Tomahawk missiles, no security guarantees. At some point Trump said, maybe I'll give both sides security guarantees. I'll get the Russians any. The guy's a nut. Nothing other than more pressure to concede, more pressure to retreat, more pressure to surrender. And at this point, it looks like, again, the tilt in the negotiation is going to go back to appeasement, to go back to some kind of deal, some kind of real estate deal. You buy peace by giving up land, which has never really worked. But that is the Trump notion of what's happened here. Just to put in perspective what is going on the front, Russia's lost at least 100,000 troops since January 2025, while only capturing 0.4% of Ukraine. Total losses are somewhere between 1 million to 1.4 million, including anywhere between 200,000 to 500,000 dead. These are like World War I numbers. And not only World War I numbers, but also the gain in land per body killed is like trench warfare in World War I. And here's the thing. Russia has a birth rate that is way below replacement, right? So all these a million people or 500,000 people dead, 500,000 men dead, that is a net lowering of Russia's population, and it's a permanent net lowering in a country that's already shrinking population-wise. Russia is a fading power. It's trying to go out with a bang. It's trying to go out pretending and asserting an imperialistic agenda. But it is dying. Russia is dying. And Russia will die. You know, and as much as the West appeases them, as much as Putin, not an accidental, I guess, misspeaking. As much as Trump appeases them and is willing to just, put no pressure on them, they will die. They are going to be the losers in the long run. But in the short run, Trump is making this as painful for Ukraine as possible. I mean, imagine if Friday Trump had said, yeah, you can have the Tomahawks, you can have these other weapons, go for it. Go take back your territory. I mean, there's a reason Putin called on Thursday when he thought Trump was going to approve the Tomahawks. Putin is afraid, on the one hand. On the other hand, he's not afraid because he knows he can manipulate Trump however he wants. So, Trump is just an emotionalist compromiser who admires Putin. I mean, Putin might have something on him. We don't know. But probably not. It's probably just his admiration for Putin and the fact that he his admiration for him, and the fact that Putin's strong, Putin's uncompromising, Putin does not budge an inch, and Trump is just easily manipulated. I know, it's 5D chess, but no, he's just easily manipulated, and Putin is manipulating him. He's a weak emotionalist who can be easily manipulated by the last guy who's talked to him. All right. So, that's where we are. I mean, Europe is taking another small step. I mean, these are tiny little steps towards disconnecting itself from Russia. So, Europe still buys some natural gas from Russia, particularly Eastern Europe. Anyway, the European Council has agreed on a draft resolution to entirely phase out any short-term contracts for Russian natural gas by January 1st, 2026. It's not clear why it's taken it, 4 years to do that? And then a full ban throughout all of the EU starting January 1, 2028, which will be 6 years after the war began. And the United States still buys uranium from Russia and other stuff from Russia. So we're putting tariffs on all our friends. We're still buying lots of stuff from Russia and treating them like a friend. And our friends we treat like enemies. I mean, this administration has no semblance of any kind of strategic foreign policy. Nothing. It's just whim. And there's no good guys, bad guys, friends, foes. It's just whatever Trump decides when he gets up in the morning. All right, a few quick stories. We have a few quick ones. Bolivia has a new president, which is a good thing because the past presidents over the last 20 years have been a disaster. They've all been far leftists. The election over the weekend was between a kind of centrist, center-right, and a conservative. The center-right centrist kind of won. His name is Rodrigo Paz. He's not Milei, and he's not a radical, and he's not a free market guy, but he's not a socialist. He's not a crazy leftist like the previous administrations in Bolivia have been. And Bolivia, which is a country with vast natural resources, that has an amazing potential to in South America to become a significant country and export natural resources and become relatively wealthy, is a dirt poor country as a consequence of socialist mishandling. It's not like the socialists have created economic equality. It's not like the poor are not poor in Bolivia. It's exactly what happens whenever you have socialism. They're more poor now than ever before because of the socialists. So socialists only increase the number of the poor. Anyway, this new president has promised privatization, has promised respect for property rights. He is part of the Christian Democratic Party, again, which is kind of a centrist party. He's promising some shrinkage of the welfare state, but not much. Mostly, it's moderate move towards more a market economy, but nothing dramatic, nothing radical. The conservative wasn't offering anything really that different. This was not that the conservative was going to be some free market, amazing stuff, and the Bolivians chose the centrist. They were both about the same when it comes to economics. Paz himself is a complete pragmatist. He believes in really nothing. I mean, he basically is quoted as saying, ideologies don't put food on the table. He has, over the years, been a leftist, been a on the right, and landed up as a centrist. His economic plan is what centrists usually do: tax incentives for small businesses and self-employed, greater physical autonomy for regional governments, not a significant shrinkage of government spending, some limited privatization. But again, small businesses, that's always the focus. God forbid you have big businesses. Bolivia's economy is not doing well, but hasn't done well. Again, poverty has increased in spite of all the natural resources they have. I wouldn't be surprised if they have vast amounts of, rare earth. He promised not to cut welfare, and basically focus on tax incentives. By the way, this reminds me, tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll be doing a show on really the last principled leader in the West, I think, at least in the West, and that was Margaret Thatcher. So we'll do a whole show, an hour, and I'll take your questions on Margaret Thatcher. It's a show sponsored by Alexis, and the Iron Lady who governed Great Britain from 1979 to 1990, and completely changed that country. Completely changed it. Although, the last few conservative governments and this current Labour government are really trying to reverse much of what she achieved in the country. So tonight, 7 p.m. East Coast time, we will be talking about the UK, part of the problems in the UK today are the fact that come from the fact that she didn't go far enough, and that her term ended prematurely. She needed another 10 years to completely reform the UK economic system, and one of the things she didn't do much about was things like the National Health Service and the welfare state, which she didn't really shrink. It didn't change the basis on which they were established. She needed more time to be able to achieve that. And if that had happened, then we wouldn't be in the mess we're in today. There are other issues we'll talk to, right? We'll talk about tonight about if only the conservatives had listened to her, things would be a lot better today. For example, there would have been no Brexit because there would have been no need for Brexit. Okay, so yeah, things better in Bolivia. This is good. Since we're in Latin America, let me also mention Colombia. Just worth mentioning that the situation today in Colombia is such that the U.S. bombed another drug boat, or so-called supposedly drug boat. The president of Colombia came out and said, "No, that wasn't a drug boat. That was a fisherman you killed. You're just killing Colombian citizens who have nothing to do with the drug trade." And that really pissed off Trump. So Trump basically is cutting off all aid. We have a bunch of foreign aid still going to Colombia. All aid to Colombia. Now, the Colombian president is a bad guy. He's a leftist. Good riddance. Of course, standing up to Trump might make him more popular in Colombia. But look, we've talked about this. The bombing of these boats, killing people. I mean, just randomly. Even the commander of the Southern Command of the Navy resigned because he couldn't justify this. You're basically killing people in the high seas with no good reason, with no, established evidence. They captured a boat with two guys still alive, and they captured it. And you thought, okay, they'll bring the two guys back to the United States and try them for smuggling drugs. No, they extradited them back to Colombia. Why? Maybe they didn't want them on trial to find out that they're not drug smugglers? Who knows? But the point is, the United States is now a rogue nation, shooting up boats in the Caribbean Sea, killing people randomly because they're in the drug trade. This is now a capital offense with no trial. It's insane what's going on. And again, like a lot of what Trump gets away with and a lot of what Trump does, nobody's calling him on it. Nobody seems to care. He just gets away with everything. And he gets away with so much, or he does so much that's offensive, that people don't even know where to focus. So. All right. Let's see. All right, let's talk about the I-5, the fiasco on the I-5, which I suffered from yesterday, because I was traveling yesterday, from LA to just north of San Diego, and none of the map software showed any problem. So I was thinking, wow, I'm going to get to where I'm supposed to get early because there's just no traffic. It's smooth. I looked at Waze, Apple Maps, Google, all of them. And then suddenly, as I'm in Orange County, heading south, in South Orange County, almost to where Camp Pendleton is, I get this announcement on the map software. Oh, I-5 has been closed. And it turns out they shut down the I-5. I had to do a detour through the mountains, which landed up making a something that would have been a 2.5-hour drive, turning into a 5-hour drive. So it took me 5 hours to get to where I needed to be. And I was going to Leonard Peikoff's birthday party, so I was 2 hours late to the birthday party as a consequence. Anyway, it turned out that what happened was that there was this total miscommunication, total lack of communication between the Marines doing this exercise for Vance and Hegseth on the Marine base using live ammunition, and California Highway Police and the California government. This is what happens when the governor and the president don't get along and there's no communication between the federal and the state government. And CHP didn't know if to close the highway and not to close the highway. They planned to close the highway, then they weren't going to plan to close the highway because the Marines gave them guarantees that there was no live ammunition flying over the highway. And then it turned out there was live ammunition going over the highway. So they closed the highway. And the map softwares didn't know that this was planned. The whole thing was just a catastrophe. And then it turns out that a California Highway Police cruiser on one of the off-ramps on the highway actually got hit by shrapnel. One of the howitzer things that exploded in air, not where it was supposed to, and there was shrapnel that hit one of the police cruisers. So it's good, I guess, they closed the highway because they were literally shooting live ammunition over the highway, and who knows what would have happened. I mean, just the incompetence of the whole thing. The pathetic nature. This should have been a celebration of the Marines' 250th birthday. This became a partisan issue. It should have been a bipartisan celebration. And there should have been all the kind of safety requirements and all the kind of stuff that you need to do in order to shoot live ammunition over a highway. Because I don't know if you know Camp Pendleton, it goes from the Pacific eastward, and the highway I-5 goes right close to the Pacific, but goes right through it, and the training is often on both sides, and often you can see the training going on. You can see the helicopters, the helicopter landing pads. You can see where they do amphibious coming onto shore. It's a major Marines base and a major Marine training, but there's a highway that goes right through it. And it's this animosity that exists that you can't even get this right. I mean, literally, these were live live shells over the highway. And they did it the night before, and then they did it the day of. Without proper coordination with the local authorities. Yeah, that's where we are. All right, we're going to do this quickly because, it's already a long show. Wow. So we're going to do this quickly, but this is a story that is going to be relevant, I think, for a while now, and I'm going to be watching and talking to you about. But the reality is that over the last few weeks, we've seen some real financial stress or with lending, with different lending institutions, a little reminiscent, and I don't want anybody to panic, but a little reminiscent of the kind of financial stress you saw a year before the great financial crisis in 2008. I mean, different in a sense of different industries and places. We saw a few weeks ago the bankruptcy of lenders into the auto space, into the auto market. And the accusations of fraud, which often you see when there's stress in the market, where people are hiding their bad loans, hiding their failures, and we don't have all the information yet exactly what happened here. But what you see then is people try to again hide the stress, hide the problems, and they commit fraud in the process. And it looks like that's what happened with this lender in the auto space. A lot of companies that had invested into that auto space are taking significant losses, and they are under stress now because they're taking losses because they were providing capital to these auto lenders and to this industries, And these were auto loans. There's a company that was giving out auto loans, but they had raised capital from other financial institutions. So there was a little bit of a chain reaction here. Nothing yet to cause real panic, but it's there. It exists. And then last week, two banks, Zion and Western Alliance, both reported that it turned out that some loans that they had made, and they had thought that when they made the loans, they were in, first position they were the first claimant. They were going to get the assets if the entities filed for bankruptcy. They would get the assets first. It turned out the fraud again was committed, and that they are not the first claimants, and that they are probably going to take losses because they have been bumped down in the claimants list because the loans were misrepresented. There was fraud. Now, how a bank could make a mistake like that, how somebody could defraud a bank, which is specialized in exactly this, is a little bewildering, and it again suggests froth in the market where banks were making loans without doing all the due diligence, just like before the financial crisis, and just wanting to deploy funds, just wanting to deploy money, which is scary. Anyway, as a consequence, when this was announced, regional bank stocks plummeted. They went down 6% in one day. Right? And they've recovered much of that since, but they did go down a lot that day. Why? And so, there's the cockroach theory in finance. I don't know if you know the cockroach theory. The cockroach theory is based on the idea when you see a cockroach anywhere, right? There's probably like 5,000 of them somewhere close by, right? The cockroaches don't travel alone. They're not present alone. So if you see one, there's a whole bunch of them somewhere close by. Not a pleasant thought, by the way, but a reality. Well, the same idea in finance is when you start seeing financial fraud, when you start seeing financial problems, like what we're seeing now in a few spotty places, it's probably not isolated instances. It could very well be an indication of real challenges within the financial system. So the few loans that have gone bad, what else is going on? So Wall Street Journal, The Economist has a story, why Wall Street is fearful of more lending blowups. Both banks and private market giants are on the cockroach watch. That's how they call it, right? And Jamie Dimon on October 14th, just last week, said, I probably shouldn't say this, but when you see one cockroach, there are probably more. Again, worried about the blowups of Tricolor, the auto lender, First Brands, which was also blew up, and a lot of people lost a lot of money, which was a car parts maker. And of course, the problems that we're seeing with Western Alliance and Zions Bank. And we will see what happens next. Now again, Western Alliance and Zion is saying fraud. Cantor Group, which was the borrowing entity or the network of borrowers, saying no, there was no fraud here. So everybody's going to shift the blame, and we won't know exactly what happened until more data comes out or it goes to court. But you got to worry, particularly given how expensive the stock market is. The stock market is at all-time highs or close to all-time highs. The S&P 500 is up 14% this year. It's not clear why, what justifies that. Interest rates out there, like interest rates where banks are lending to each other up, which suggests that banks are worried about banks, other banks. So everybody's kind of on hold. Now, last time we had a mini banking crisis was 2023, when Silicon Valley Bank went under and then Signature and First Republic were closed by the regulators. The Fed had an extraordinary response, bailing everybody out basically, which allowed banks to kind of not to enter into a financial crisis, allowed them kind of to survive. But that just means there's still a lot of bad stuff in the system that was not cleared out during 2023. So, for example, at the time, there were a huge amount of losses that banks had taken on long-term bonds, about $690 billion. Now, the banks didn't suffer the consequence of that because the Fed basically bailed them all out. But today, while it's not $690 billion, banks still have losses on the books from their bond portfolio of about $400 billion. This is government bonds. When interest rates go up, the value of those bonds go down. This goes back to the 0% interest rate environment during COVID. Banks took out, bought long-term bonds with very low interest rates. Interest rates goes up. The value of those bonds went down. They took massive losses. This is basically all banks. And they're still holding $400 billion of losses on those portfolios. So there's not a lot of slack in the system. Now, it's true. The Fed has shown a willingness and an ability to bail everybody out. And that'll happen in the next crisis without any question. But one wonders, when you bail everybody out, that creates a massive moral hazard problem, which creates bad lending practices, which creates all kinds of speculation and credit that shouldn't be given and stuff like that. And all of that is probably in the system. And given that all that is in the system, at some point, you have to pay the piper. At some point, all of that is going to come crashing down. And so there is a financial crisis somewhere in our future. I don't know when. I have no idea. I don't try price these. But look at gold prices. Gold prices are basically saying it's any day. It's already happening. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what actually materializes. All right. I don't know if you noticed. I noticed this morning that AWS, Amazon Web Services, went down today. I don't know for how long, but it was down. There were a bunch of apps that didn't work. It was a global outage. It took down Snapchat, Fortnite, Facebook, Coinbase, Perplexity. And for example, I noticed it because I couldn't get onto Wall Street Journal. WallStreetJournal.com was down. You couldn't play with your PlayStation. Alexa stopped functioning. Many corporate dashboards just flatlined. Basically, the digital world, stopped. Or much of it. AWS is the largest cloud service provider in the world, or at least in the United States. And when it goes down, much of modern life goes down. The internet is very concentrated. Our cloud is very concentrated. Few companies control much of it. Amazon, Microsoft, Google, they're it. Oracle might have a piece, but they're it basically. And Amazon controls a disproportionate part of it. And it makes the system very vulnerable to problems. I don't know what happened at AWS. We'll probably find out soon, or in the days, weeks, months to come. But it is a big deal. It is a big deal, and it shows how dependent all of us are on the cloud. By the way, even crypto was hurt by this. It's not like crypto is actually decentralized. It's actually not. It's actually not. Okay, let's see a few short ones. The Louvre, the most important museum in the world, probably art museum in the world, the most amazing art museum in the world, certainly. And a real cultural institution in France, was broken into. Jewels from Josephine, the wife of Napoleon, were stolen. The heist it was pretty amazing. It's like out of a movie. On Sunday morning, a team of four burglars managed to park a truck with a furniture lift, right, at the foot of the Louvre Palace. And I guess the police and everybody else just thought this was part of ongoing maintenance and ongoing stuff. Anyway, they parked at the foot of the Louvre Palace. No security personnel, no police, nothing. They went up the elevator, this furniture elevator, to a level above. They broke the window. They broke the window into the room where the jewels were housed. I guess they used a angle grinder to cut the window, and then they used the angle grinder to cut the case in which the jewels were present, and then they took the jewels, went out the window, went down the lift, and drove away. In other words, this was just out of the movies. It took 7 minutes. 7 minutes for the whole thing to happen. It is a massive embarrassment to the Louvre, to the French government, and a lot of people are saying, how can this happen? I mean, there might have been alarms, but they did it so fast, it didn't matter. It turns out that for budget reasons, budget constraint reasons, there are not that many security guards at the Louvre and not that many surveillance cameras. And of course, the thieves had checked this out and discovered where the surveillance cameras were and where, I guess, the security guards were, and went to a point where there was a weakness, no cameras, no guards, and they could get in and out very, very quickly. The Louvre is 700,000 square feet of exhibitions, from paintings, sculptures, statues of Egyptian pharaohs to, jewelry from Napoleon era. While authorities, I guess security authorities, had been telling the police that this was a vulnerability for a long time. Nobody did anything about it. And indeed, the Louvre has been cutting staff over the last few years, partially because the French government is pretty much bankrupt. The burglars did this at 9:30 a.m., right after the museum opens its doors, which means the security guards were, basically trying to evacuate the large crowds when the alarm went off, versus and protecting the works, versus going to where the jewels were, where the alarm was ringing. So they caught them at exactly the right moment, where there's a big inflow of people, and then the alarms go off, and you have to evacuate those people. And I guess everything basically failed. The cultural minister said 5 security guards immediately responded to the break-in, but it was too late. Too late. And again, there was a huge focus on protecting the visitors. So yeah, not enough staff. They actually cut the number of visitors to the Louvre significantly because there's not enough staff. We've got a significant, they've got infrastructure problems. It turns out that the facility's infrastructure is not handling the number of people, and they don't have enough people to watch over all the people coming. Anyway, Macron has a plan, but the plan is not going to be fully in place until 2031. In the meantime, jewels are being taken. Supposedly, one of the first phone calls the French authorities made was to a security firm run by a former Israeli Shin Bet, head of the Shin Bet, that's internal security in Israel, who specializes in finding these kind of things. There's a manhunt on right now, and who knows? It'll be interesting to see if they ever find these jewels. A couple of good news stories. So it turns out, I don't know, I have dry age macular degeneration, and one of the dry age related macular degeneration. So this is a condition of the eye. As long as it stays dry, it doesn't have any impact. But it could easily turn what's called wet, and as a consequence of that, I could lose my eyesight. And a lot of people, there's a significant number of people who do lose their eyesight as a consequence of this. Anyway, scientists have invented an implant into the eye that helps people who've lost their eyesight as a consequence of wet eye macular degeneration regain their eyesight. The device helped 81% of trial participants suffering from advanced age-related macular degeneration to achieve clinically meaningful improvements in their vision. The technology, which is targets a certain part of the eye, is part of just the ability now to put kind of prosthetic implants into different parts of the brain, into the eye, into different organs, in order to make us bionic and make us better. In this case, this device, basically compensates for the fact that the retina loses its ability to detect light and transfer it into signals from the brain. And this chip does that. And again, positive results. This was all at the ophthalmology department at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. More than 80% of patients were able to read letters and words, and some of them are reading pages in a book. And again, this is just the beginning. You can just imagine that this will give people 20/20 or better vision sometime in the future. So that's great news. And finally, I'm a huge fan of Waymo. I love Waymos. I've driven in Waymo in San Francisco. I've driven in Waymo in Phoenix. I noticed when I was in Los Angeles that there are Waymo cars in Los Angeles. I didn't realize that, but there were quite a few of them. Now, they still don't drive on the highway, so there's a limited region in which you can order a Waymo and to get from one place to another. But where they work really, really well. They tend to be cheaper than Uber, and I think they drive safer than any Uber driver. Yeah, I'm a huge fan, and I've ridden in them a number of times, and I really like the experience. Anyway, it looks like Waymo is now going to expand to London, which is, I believe, a big deal. London is a very difficult market, partially because you have a very powerful taxi union. Those black taxis, black cabs. And I love black cabs in London, but they really fought Uber for a very long time. They ultimately lost, but they fought it. They did their best. By the way, taxi unions in the rest of Europe have done very, very well and kept Uber out. So it does look like, right? It does look like that Waymo will make it into London. They've got permission to start in 2026. That'd be great. Competition out to Uber and Lyft. They might team up with Uber. I've seen in some cities where Uber and Waymo, team up, or Lyft and Waymo team up. So we'll see what the business model looks like in London. But I'm excited, and I think this is a huge contributor to improved standard of living, quality of life. It reduces traffic, and it ultimately dramatically reduces accidents and fatalities and all of that. And so I'm excited by that. I think the rest of Europe will be a lot more difficult. I mean, it's still true that you don't get Uber in Italy, you don't get Uber in Spain. There's Uber in Portugal. You don't get Uber on and off in Copenhagen. God, I don't even know in France, but my guess is no. Another way in which European standard of livings are below the standard of living of Americans, they don't have Uber. Uber's like life-altering. It is such a great technology. It's so easy. You can commit to going anywhere, and you can come back. You don't have to call up a taxi and wait around for a taxi. Everything is at your fingertips. It's an amazing tech, and improves life significantly. Significantly. So, a significant benefit to U.S. markets that the Europeans do not have. All right, I had a few other short ones, but we'll skip them. And for now, given that we've already gone an hour and we've got a bunch of questions. Armin just came in with a $100 sticker. Thank you, Armin. Really, really appreciate it. Good to see you here, and I really appreciate the support. Stephen, thank you. Ryan, thank you. These are all stickers. William, thank you. Friend Harper, thank you. Jonathan, thank you. It was good to see you, Jonathan, over the weekend. Thanks, guys. Thanks everybody for Thanks everybody for the support, for supporting the Yaron Brook Show. You guys make it possible for me to do this show. Without your support, couldn't do the show. My time, you are buying it in a sense. You're making this show possible. Thank you also to all the super chatters. We'll get to your questions in a minute. And thank you to all the people who support the show on a monthly basis. Don't forget, patreon.com or paypal.com are ways in which you can support the show on a regular basis. Let's see. We have 3 sponsors for the show. The Ayn Rand Institute wants to remind you all that the deadline for the Atlas Shrugged Essay Contest, $25,000 first prize, is coming up at the end of this month. So submit your essays. If you're going to write an essay, do it now. If you want more information about submitting an essay, what the question is, prizes, all of that, you can go to aynrand.org/start here, aynrand.org/start here, and check it out. If you're a student, any kind of student, you should definitely be participating. I mean, what have you got to lose? $25,000 on the table. Alex Epstein is the #1 world expert on things that are so relevant to all of our lives: climate change and environmentalism and energy, electricity, electric cars, all of that stuff. Check out Alex's work. You will thank me. It is the best work on these topics, and it will enhance your life. You'll just gain a much deeper, much better understanding of all these issues. alexepstein.substack.com. alexepstein.substack.com. And finally, hendershotwealth.com/YBS, Hendershot with 2 T's, offering products that can reduce your capital gains taxes significantly, your capital gains liabilities. So if you have a large gain in a stock portfolio, or if you've got a business you're about to sell, check them out. You can check out the interview I did with Robert Hendershot. It's on my channel on YouTube under playlists. And check it out. And if it's interesting, then go to the website, sign up, and have a conversation with them. No commitment, no hard sell. Just try to figure out if it makes sense for you or not. hendershotwealth.com/YBS. All right. And finally, well, not finally, but again, don't forget, if you want to support the show, one of the best ways to do it, patreon.com, monthly support, regular, predictable, great way to make sure that the show stays on there for the long run. All right. Let's see. Let's start with our $50 questions. We've got 2 of those. Thank you, guys. Really cool. All right. Mike, I've registered for your debate in Colorado Springs. I can't wait. I remember you saying that you prefer us to asking you a question rather than to challenge the opponent. Any questions you can think of would help you talk about what you want. God, that is difficult to do right now because I don't know exactly what's going to happen during the debate, what I'm going to say, what I'm going to respond to, what exactly he's going to say. Although I've done debates with this guy, so I should know. I can't remember, so I'm going to have to watch some of my old debates with him. And he just did a debate with Coleman Hughes. So, he just did a debate with Coleman Hughes, so I'm going to watch that to kind of brush up before I do the debate with him. I think the best thing is for you to be there, and you kind of know my position on capitalism. And if you don't think that enough about the ethics has come out, right, the morality of capitalism versus the morality of socialism, then ask a question about that. Or if you think the history hasn't been covered enough, then bring up a question about the history. So I'm going to leave it up to you. Just think about the things that you, knowing my position on capitalism, your position on capitalism, what could flesh out the argument? What would make the argument even more convincing? What topic haven't I really delved deep enough? Given it's a debate, you're not going to cover everything that you would like to see more of, and ask a question about that. That's the best advice I have. Thank you, Mike, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the debate November 13th, Colorado Springs. You guys should all show up and ask me questions, not the other guy, because when you ask the other guy questions, you give him more opportunity to talk. He has answers. He's heard all the questions. It's not like you're going to catch him. They'll evade. They'll do what they need to do. They're good. Bushkow, who's the guy debating, he's good. I've debated him before. He knows his stuff, right? What you want is to minimize the time he speaks in the Q&A. So ask me questions, so maximize the time I speak. James. Twice in the last century, Germany fought to rule and impose its culture on the rest of the world. It lost both wars. But on a deeper level, it is achieving its goal nonetheless. It is on the verge of winning the philosophical war against the West. Well, yes. I mean, here's the thing about the philosophical war. It's not doing it consciously. It's not like Germany is out there, people in Germany out there, we're going to win because everybody's a Kantian now, or everybody, they're going to win but not because they tried. In a sense, it's by default because the opposition has not been strong enough, but not by plan, not on purpose. They're going to win. And they're not even going to know they won because they're going to suffer the consequences with the rest of the West. But yes, the ideas of German Romanticism, the ideas of Kant, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Marx, Nietzsche, have ultimately resulted in what we have today, in the complete mess, and the pragmatism of the right, or the pragmatism of the old right, the wokeism and the postmodernism of the left, and the rebellion against all that, which will be Christianity. Which, remember, Kant wrote that his goal was to save faith from reason, right? To make room for faith because of the threat faith was under by the Enlightenment. Well, to the extent that faith wins, Christianity wins, or Islam wins, if you believe Islam is going to take over, he won. Kant won because he undermined our confidence in reason. He undermined a commitment to reason. And by doing so, left space for faith, which has only grown and grown and grown and seems to be even growing more right now as we speak. Thank you, James. Appreciate the support. Catherine, in which countries are Ayn Rand's books forbidden by government to sell? Is it possible to buy her books, for example, in Turkmenistan, Iran, or Venezuela? You know, I don't know. I don't think it's possible to buy her books in Iran. I don't know about Turkmenistan. And Venezuela, I don't think it's illegal to buy her books. I don't know that the bookstores carry them, but I don't think it's illegal in Venezuela to buy her books. I don't know if it's even illegal in Iran to own Ayn Rand's books. I don't know if they have a prohibition, but they're not sold, and they're not in Farsi, and they're not in Arabic. So most Arab countries, they don't exist. In UAE, suppose you can buy it in English. In China, you can buy it in Chinese. In Vietnam, you can buy Ayn Rand books in Vietnamese. But I'm sure in a lot of other smaller countries where it hasn't been translated or where there's not a big enough market, they just don't exist. It's not so much that there have been governments that have banned the books as some countries just don't have a big enough market and enough people interested to have the books for sale and have them translated. Although Ayn Rand's books are translated into pretty much every major language out there, and many of the minor ones as well. Almost every European language, many Asian languages. So, a number of Indian languages, for example. I think 4 different Indian languages. Liam, has the growth of the Objectivist movement ever exceeded your expectation, or has it always been disappointing? Well, I mean, I don't think it's ever been disappointing. I would have liked it to be bigger, but I don't walk around thinking I'm disappointed in the growth of the Objectivist movement. And what does the Objectivist movement even mean? Right? So suddenly during the Tea Party era, it seemed like Ayn Rand was everywhere. But was that the Objectivist movement growing? Probably not. It was interest in her ideas in a superficial way growing that didn't result really in a big movement growing. So I don't think it's in those terms. I don't know what that means. The ultimate question is the influence on the culture. And the influence on the culture is disappointing. And is that disappointing because we don't have enough Objectivists? Is that disappointing because the Objectivists we have are not doing enough, or not doing the right things, or not doing, all of that is up for debate. But what's disappointing is the relatively lack of impact on the culture, not the size of the Objectivist movement, which nobody can measure anyway, which nobody knows. I mean, who's an Objectivist? Do we want to play the game? Do you want to list a name of people and I'll tell you yes Objectivist, no Objectivist? I mean, it's hard to do. It's not what's interesting, right? So, the crusade to change the world is a crusade taken up by Objectivist intellectuals. And there are quite a few of those. Am I disappointed in the number of intellectuals, which is, I think, what matters? Yeah, to some extent. I would have liked more. A lot of people have dropped off over the years, and a lot of people have become non-intellectuals, or have intellectuals but are bad. But I think that more than ever, I see the trend towards even more growth among of intellectuals. And that's what's important. What's important is I never in my life thought that objectivism would win in my lifetime. So that's never been the issue. I've never thought objectivism would win in my lifetime. The question has always been, will I see movement towards it winning someday? An answer to that is yes. I'm seeing the foundations of ever-growing intellectual base and ever-growing intellectual community that will ultimately change the world after my lifetime. But that's always been the issue. So I know you guys want change right now, but it's never been about change right now. If you'd asked me 30 years ago, will I see change in my lifetime, I would have said no. It's not. You're not going to have capitalism in this lifetime. Hopefully, you start having small movements in that direction, and hopefully you see progress in that direction. But that's about it. All right. Shazbot. General Melchett, this is from Blackadder. So, the amount of land taken, this is trench warfare, World War I. So the amount of land taken is, Captain Darling, 17 square feet, sir. Melchett. So you see, Captain Blackadder didn't die horribly in vain after all. So yes, they took 17 square feet, so he didn't die in vain. So that's the Ukraine war right now, certainly on the Russian side. Andrew, Blackadder, one of the best shows ever. You guys should watch it. How Shazbot gets all these quotes, I have no idea. Andrew says, I know it's a little cliche, but when people say, try to be present in whatever you're doing, I think it's good advice and key to living a more joyful life. We should plan for the future, but we live in the present thoughts. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And really all it means is focus. Focus. Focus on what you're doing. And sometimes focus on planning for the future. But on whatever you're doing, whatever you're experiencing now, and we only experience the present, focus. Be in the moment. Be there. Don't drift. Don't be somewhere else. And there's a time to focus on the future. When you have to focus on the future because you're planning, focus. So really, it's a cliche with a significant moral meaning behind it. Be in focus in your life. Don't drift. Don't cloud over. Use your mind to focus on facts, reality, whatever it is that you're doing. All right. Andrew says, objectivism's sanctioning of the use of force in retaliation to force is an important departure from Christianity's love thy enemy and turn thy cheek. Yes, I mean, but look, nobody who's ever achieved any success politically has ever practiced that, right? So Christianity, love your enemy, turn the other cheek, unless, the heretics, unless you can convert them unless you're doing God's work, unless you're spreading Christianity. Notice that nobody, no system of thought can achieve anything, is moved anyway has achieved anything by taking to another cheek seriously. And Christianity hasn't. It gives lip service to it. It creates guilt associated with it, but it doesn't literally do that. Christianity has slaughtered gazillions of people in the name of spreading the religion, in the name of retribution, in the name of justice, in the name of whatever, right? So this is the kind of, it's just like, altruism. You got to sacrifice for other people, but you also got to live. And to the extent you take 100% sacrifice for other people seriously, you die and you're gone. Your ideology is gone with you. You have to cheat in order to survive. And the cheating is what creates the guilt, and the guilt is what allows them to control you. Glad to see you and Leonard patch things up. I don't know if we've patched things up. I don't know exactly what's going on. But I was invited to the birthday party, and I was there, and we had some pleasant conversation. But have we patched things up? I just don't know. I don't know where I stand. Put it that way. But yes, I was at the birthday party. I see there's another question about that. Where is it? What can you tell us about the party? How's Leonard? I don't want to talk a lot about it. I mean, I don't go to these parties in order to then, tell you how I schmooze with Leonard and to get social credit for it, which a lot of people do. I was there to see Leonard. That was my main goal. He was, it's mainly a personal thing. I'm not trying to get points from anybody. That's why I'm not going to say we patched it up and we're all friendly and everything's great. Other people are talking about it because other people, not to offend anybody, particularly, but other people get, they get added, what would you call it? Prestige from being at the party. I don't. One way or the other, I am who I am. I don't gain that from the prestige associated with it. I don't need to publicly announce it one way or the other. But Leonard, he's weak. He's on oxygen. He's definitely frail. He's 92 years old. He's still funny. His long-term memory is pretty good. The stories about Ayn Rand. He talked about, he did a little thing on music, on ragtime, which is his latest thing that he's into, the latest artistic value that he's pursuing, which is great. What else do I want to say? He he's aware enough to want to kind of poke me and try to get me to argue with him about Trump. I didn't fall for it. So he knows my position on Trump, and I didn't think that was the place in which to hash out our differences. But yeah, so it was pleasant. It was a nice event. It's sad to see him so weak, but yeah. That's where we are. I think you could say he still backs Trump. That's the impression he gave me. But it could be, but Trump has gone pro-Putin again, so that could sway Lenin in another direction. I think it's correct to say, and I don't know because I haven't spoken to Trump about these kind of things in a long time, that Trump is very anti-Putin and is very upset whenever Trump is pro-Putin. So it could be that this weekend, given what's happened, he might switch back to being against Trump. So I don't know. I think it depends on what's actually going on at the time. Anyway, I didn't argue with him. I just said, basically implied that we disagreed and walked on, and he knows. He knew exactly. I know Leonard well enough to know exactly what he was doing. But yes. So I'm glad I was there. I'm glad I got to see him. And one more time. Who knows? Anytime could be a last time. Yeah, and I hope that we have some kind of ongoing communication over the last few years of his life, but I don't know. Yeah, all buddies ribbing each other a little is exactly right. And, I'll say this, take it for what it is, but I think he knows that if we actually got into it, that I'm right, or I would win in a actual debate between the two of us. So I think he knows that, but it doesn't prevent him from ribbing me and wanting him to know he disagrees. So it's the way it is, right? All right, but again, he's 92, and you have to take that into account. That is an important context for anything about this. Is he's 92. Ori, I haven't heard you mention Hong Kong in a while. Are they still slowly losing their freedom to the Chinese? Do you think it's still an exciting place to visit? I mean, there's no question they're losing their freedom slowly to Chinese. The legal system now is completely embedded into the Chinese legal system. But China's careful, right? So it's trying not to overdo it because it still relies on China. China still relies on Hong Kong as a commercial center, primarily as a financial center. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange is still very, very important to Chinese, and so on. So it has this delicate balance, a very delicate balance that it has to play off of. So it's not losing. If you go to Hong Kong, I doubt that you would notice the loss of freedom unless you knew Hong Kong really well. So yeah, I think if you went, it would still be an exciting place. What would reduce the excitement is the knowledge that you would have of what's going on behind the facade, that really freedom is in decline. But it's a magnificent place. Magnificent place. Thank you, Oli. Remo, because of you, I am now addicted to Korean dramas. Now that my supply has run out, you are obliged, as my dealer, to provide me with new recommendations. I struggle because I haven't found any that I'm really that excited about. I started watching a few, but I haven't finished any of them. So I'm not quite there yet. So you might have to suffer from withdrawal symptoms for a while until either you or I. You probably know more Korean dramas than I do. One thing I would recommend is take the favorite one. My favorite one is Mr. Sunshine, and watch it again. And Mr. Sunshine in particular, I think you'll enjoy maybe even more the second time than the first time. Remo says, I disagree with Ayn Rand on her view of female president because I don't think this world has seen a lot of male politicians who would do a better job than Margaret Thatcher. I don't think Ayn Rand said what she said about a female president from the perspective of she couldn't do a good job. It wasn't her perspective. Her perspective was psychological. Her perspective was a real woman wouldn't want the job. And I wouldn't want to vote for somebody who wasn't real in a sense. So it wasn't that the woman couldn't do the job. It's that no decent woman would want to do the job. I don't know what Ayn Rand would have done, but yeah, I have no qualms about voting for a woman president, a woman prime minister, if they're better than the male running against them. You know, the choices are so bad today that the psychological motivations of white people take the job that they take, even if you agree with Ayn Rand about the psychology of it, just not on the same level as kind of the existential threat that some of these male candidates pose. But yes, I think that essay is more a psychological essay than it is a philosophical one. Ice Pick. I recently saw a clip of you from 2002. Was your way of speaking different back then? To me, you sounded very similar to Milton Friedman. Ever heard that comparison? No, I've never heard that comparison. I think I saw, I don't know. I mean, the question is the clip of me reading something? Because most of my lecturing in those days, I was reading from a script. Or was it me answering a Q&A? Because the Q&A part is more like the way I speak today, I think. Whereas the lecturing part was I was reading a script, so it would be different. Evil Key, something like that. How do you think about the blowback comedians face for the Riyadh Festival? Our political leaders have given much worse sanction with little consequence. I'm all for the blowback. I mean, the fact that somebody else got away with it doesn't mean you shouldn't have the blowback. And I think particularly for comedians, I mean, you're talking about people who the whole profession relies on the idea of free speech. The whole point of what they do is make fun of the authorities, of the people in power, if you will, of bad stuff in society. And for them to go to Riyadh, a place where atheists are put in jail, where if you criticize the royal family, you go to jail and throw away the keys, I think it's disgusting. And I'm sure they weren't free to make any jokes they wanted. Imagine them being on a stage in Riyadh and making a joke about Muhammad or about the Quran. I mean, they'd be put in jail. And I would never go to a place to give a talk where, certain things that I said would land me up in jail. Maybe it's going to be difficult to go to Europe. But I mean, Saudi Arabia is such a stark example of that. Such a stark example of that. So yeah, the backlash wasn't strong enough. It should be much stronger. And yeah, we should have the same backlash on politicians. Abraham Campos, a race for the presidency is extremely close. The candidates are Trump and Mambani. Oh my God. Yaron Brook's vote will determine the outcome. Who wins? I guess I commit suicide? I don't know. I have no idea. It depends what's going on in the world and who I perceive, given what's going on in the world, as the greater threat under those circumstances. The advantage of Mambani, there's a big advantage of Mambani, is that his failure will be more obvious, faster, and his failure will be in the name of socialism. And hopefully on a national scale, because he can really implement socialism on a national scale, it will be such a disaster that people will never want a socialist again. Whereas Trump's failures, he's also a socialist, basically, a different kind of socialist, more fascist socialist, but more fascist. Also going to fail, but the failures are going to be blamed on capitalism. And therefore, Trump is laying the groundwork for Mambani. Mambani maybe lays the groundwork for Trump. I mean, it's a no-win. It's what happens there is you move to a different country. I mean, I just don't know. I just don't see how any good can come from either one of those. Either one of those. So couldn't vote for either one. Yeah, I mean, maybe capitalism is not blamed if you vote for Mambani, but who is going to take advantage of the increased authoritarianism that Mambani would bring to the world? Well, somebody on the right who's more fascist. Look, you can't escape with these kind of candidates. You can't escape the consequences of the dim hypothesis of the evolution of ideas and the way they manifest in reality. You just can't escape it. And this is the real tragedy of Trump. He is setting us up for an M2, and it's so obvious and it's so right there in our face. That's what he's setting us up for. And Mambani would probably set us up for the same thing. I mean, because that is where we're heading. It's just a question of the speed, who buys us more time, and I don't know who buys us more time. It's hard to tell. It depends on what's happening in the world at that particular moment. I think Trump is really, really, really bad if you haven't figured that out yet. Really, really bad. Harper Campbell, should ICE agents be forced to unmask? Should the public have the right to identify public officials? Absolutely. There's no even question. Nobody in government should be masked. I mean, maybe special forces when they go overseas. In the United States, no government official should, or somebody doing, I mean, I don't believe in government secrets. I believe the number of secrets should be minimal. Those necessary to protect, very, very essential national security issues. But that's it. Most things should be public. The government is your servant. Remember this. ICE is your servant. The police are your servants. The military is your servants. You don't have your servants walking around the house without revealing their identity. covered up. That is bizarre. The Secret Service are your servants. Of course, they should identify themselves. Well, and the Secret Service is. When have you ever seen the Secret Service wear masks? I've never seen it. Never seen a Secret Service guy wearing a mask. So, no secrets because they work for you. If your attitude is, the government works for me, ICE agents work for me, IRS agents work for me, then your attitude towards this is very simple and easy. I want to know who's doing what in my name. I don't care if they're putting their lives at risk. It doesn't matter if they're putting their life at risk. That's the job. The job is to put their life at risk. That's what the police do. That's what the military do. Now, I don't think they are. I think it's all way exaggerated. But, I mean, that's the job. And you don't hide from the people who employ you, which is us, the American people. That doodle bunny, most people need to have a God. I have no idea why. Well, but you don't know that most people need to have a God. Most people have chosen to have a God. I don't know where you get that they need to have a God. They've chosen it. Doesn't mean they need it. Your job is to convince them they don't. The Atheist Realist, first super chat ever. Thank you. Well, it's a sticker, but thank you from New Zealand. Really appreciate that. Let's see, did I miss any other stickers? I think I got them all. Oh, Roland. Thank you, Roland. Really appreciate it. All right. Not your average algorithm. Maybe the Enlightenment can't die. Everything can die. I don't think there's such a thing as can't die. It is true that human knowledge is incredibly diffused, and as such, we're unlikely to experience a global dark ages. And indeed, it turns out that even the dark ages that happened was not global. It was just a European dark ages, but civilizations at the level of the time thrived during the European dark ages. They thrived in India, they thrived in China, they thrived in Central Asia, and for a period starting at about 800 AD, they thrived in the Muslim world, in the entire Muslim world, including in Arabia, in the Middle East, and all the way to Spain. So we've never had everything collapse, everywhere. In an interconnected world the way we have today, maybe it can't. But yeah, I'm not pessimistic about the very distant future. I'm optimistic about that. Thomas, thank you. Really appreciate the support. I saw you conducted an opera on zero notice, so congratulations. Clark, assuming trends continue, what's your strategy for living under dictatorship when you're in your 80s and 90s? Well, I mean, I still think it's going to be a relatively soft dictatorship. I don't think it will be a totalitarian dictatorship. And, you know, I don't know. I don't have a long-term strategy for that. I will play it by ear because we'll see how the nature of the dictatorship. We'll also see if it's, you know, global, if there are places I can go where I can live free of that. But I'm not making plans for a dictatorship in my 80s and 90s. And I'm assuming in my 90s I'm going to be less vocal than I am today. We'll see. It really depends on how sharp my mind is. If my mind's not that sharp, then it would be an embarrassment for me to be overly vocal. So hopefully I'll have enough friends telling me, Yaron, it's time to retire. So please, if there are people out there who listen to this show who are in a position to tell me I should retire, please let me know when you think my mind is just not there and I should retire. I promise to take it well. I might not agree with you, but I promise to take it well. So I don't know. I don't know. Andrew, what do you think of this corollary between finance and morality, moral investing, taking actions that cost you now in energy, time, etc., but which you expect are likely to pay more later in self-esteem? Oh, moral investing. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad analogy. I think it's good. Generally, I think that whereas Christianity or conventional morality views morality in terms of sacrifice, I think morality should be viewed in terms of trade and investment. Trade with other people, trade and trade over time, which is what investment is. So I would like to replace all of the vocabulary of sacrifice with the vocabulary of trade and investment. In that sense, absolutely. You might not, I mean, when Howard Roark turns down the bank commission, they're offering him a lot of money, but he would have to give up his artistic integrity in order to get it. And he says, no. What is he doing there? He's basically giving up, in that sense, investing, losing in the present in order to gain something much, much greater in the future. And in that sense, it's not a loss. It's a trade. He's trading away the money that he would get from the bank building to maintain his integrity so he can gain the self-esteem, not just in the future, but really immediately. Subkasky is worried about replacing me. We've got, 20 years to worry about that. Let's 20 years. We'll find somebody in 20 years. Find somebody in 20 years. Nikos, maybe? I mean, a lot of people who might replace me over the next 20 years. Plenty of time to think about replacements. And there are going to be lots of options. I'm going to be replaced by many people, not by one. I'm still expecting that day where there'll be 20, 30, 40 objectivist intellectuals doing what I'm doing on a regular basis. Michael, imagine storming the beaches of Normandy just for your grandkids to vote fascism back in 80 years later. Well, I mean, we're not quite there yet. We're not fascist yet. And 80 years of freedom is not bad. It's your lifetime, right? You worry less about your grandkids, worry more about yourself. And you're storming the beaches of Normandy with the idea that you're preserving freedom, and they did. So 80 years is nothing to sneeze at. It's a lifetime. So, I don't know that anybody stormed Normandy for the sake of people 80 years in the future. They stormed Normandy for the sake of the people they loved right then and there and their children. But there's only so much you can think way out into the future. Clark, you say we're not going to Nazi Germany, but racism, anti-Semitism, and nationalism are completely mainstream. This combination is the essence of Nazism. I don't think it's mainstream. I think it's a minority of people, actually a pretty small minority of people, who happen to be very, very active online. But it's not mainstream. Look at how most people responded to the young Republicans with outrage. Many of them had to resign. That's not mainstream. If there was mainstream, none of them would resign. And they would just say, oh, okay, nothing special about that. The fact that they were still condemned and that they had to resign suggests that it's not mainstream. Let's see. Hopper Campbell, why do unions exist in manufacturing and not in Silicon Valley? Well, I mean, there are not that many unions in manufacturing. Unions have been in decline since the 1950s. And that's the era in which Silicon Valley rose. The other aspect of this is Silicon Valley very much rose on a mentality of individualism, of merit, of achievement, and compensation based on achievement. It very much rose on that kind of ethic. And that was the opposite ethic of the unions. So it was never appealing in Silicon Valley. And Silicon Valley rose at the time unions were declining. And indeed in new industries, for example, all over the South, there are no unions. Unions are phenomena of the past and exist, in old industries. The one place where you see unions getting stronger is the government. That's where you're seeing more and more unions. And things like cleaners, manual labor, very simple manual labor. But unions generally have been in decline for decades. Mirko, hi, Yaron. Have you tried the balsamic vinegar? Not yet, but we did get it to the U.S. We did get it home, so we do have it. We'll try it. I'll let you know. Thank you for the support. It's good seeing you again. Good seeing you here again. And yes, I still owe you some dates for next year. I'll get back to you once I know what I'm doing. Evilkey or whatever. Can you talk about the government-backed credit rating agencies affecting the debt issues you discussed? Well, I don't know how they've affected these particular issues because I haven't really delved deeply into this. But the credit agencies in the past have done a really, really, really bad job in identifying risks of debt and adjusting their ratings. And it wouldn't surprise me if they failed this time as well. There are only three, or used to be only three credit rating agencies. And only three because the government has only basically signed off on three. And the government also forces certain investment vehicles to only invest in rated securities by these three. So it kind of creates a built-in market for these pathetic losing rating agencies. But I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they were all AAA rating because these rating agencies are really, really pathetic because they never suffer from the, if you will, creative destruction, the forces of markets when they fail, because they know that nobody can compete them away because the government has only granted them the ability to rate. And people rely on these ratings because some investors have to. They have no choice. Others are skeptical and often don't invest in the securities that these rating agencies produce. But sadly, not enough people understand the extent to which the rating agencies are oligopoly created by government. Inefficient, uncompetitive, and error-prone. Andrew, effort qua effort is not painful unless one makes it so, but do many people make it so? I don't know. Sometimes effort is painful. So effort qua effort. I mean, when you're doing lunges with like heavy weights in both hands, sometimes your muscles are really pain. It's really painful. So I don't know what kind of effort you're talking about. Certainly physical effort can be painful. And it's not a psychological issue, just it's painful because your muscles are ripping. A lot of people make any kind of effort painful because we live in a world which is so, in many aspects of life, anti-effort. And effort is resented. And so people, people fight against it, fight against the need for it. And that becomes painful psychologically. All right, I'll remind you, 2 more questions, but I'll remind you that tonight, 7 p.m. East Coast time, so 2 hours basically, I'm doing a show on Margaret Thatcher, 100th birthday to Margaret Thatcher. It should be fun. Sponsored by Alexis. Have you seen the viral settler attacks video today going around Twitter? Any additional information for your end? This is O'Neill. No, I wonder about the videos. That is, are they real? To what extent are they doctored? Given the sources, right? I haven't seen any confirmation of the videos from reliable sources. But on the other hand, the settlers, These are religious fanatics who are messianic and faith-based, and these are bad people. And if I were running the Israeli government, I'd put them in jail, and they should go to jail. And with a different government, maybe not this particular government, they would go to jail. So one of the problems with this government is they're way too tolerant, way too allowing of these religious fanatics who violate individual rights in the West Bank and attack Palestinians. You have to be careful about any particular claim, but generally it's happening, and the government is not doing enough to stop it. And that's one of the many things I do not like about, this particular government. Fen Harper says, I liked your interview with Maxim Beshev. I met him at Ocon and thought he was a good guy. Yeah, I think he's a good guy. I hope everyone finds and watches it. Yeah, I'd be putting it up. It should make it up to my channel soon. So it'll be coming up on my channel soon, maybe at the end of this week. So you'll all be able to see it if you can't find it on Maxim's channel. All right, guys, I will see you all in 2 hours to talk about Margaret Thatcher. Don't miss that. It'll be positive and fun and good. So join us there. Thank you to all the super chatters. Thank you to all the supporters. And if you don't catch me later today, there is a show tomorrow at the same time. I think it's at 3 o'clock tomorrow. So bye, everybody. See you soon.